Hello everyone, we're live again. And hello to my guest today. It's Scrimba teacher and Amazon developer, Dylan Israel. That bit of applause for you, Dylan.
Oh my goodness. I didn't know the applause are coming. This is some production. I like that. Hi.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I didn't know the applause are coming. This is some production. I like that. Hi.
I can, for some reason, hear you twice, which is okay. There you go. That's my screw up of the week. Hopefully it won't get any worse. Yeah, Dylan, thank you very much for joining us today. We're excited to have you. And
Yeah, I'm always happy to hop on. I did on Monday. I guess meet your teacher, and that was exciting.
Yeah, that was super exciting from what I hear. And now we've got you live on YouTube. So yeah, thanks ever so much for coming. And to everyone who's joining us, either live or watching the replay. Just to give you an idea of what's going to happen today, we're going to kick off with a chat with Dylan. And as usual, if you've got questions, hit up the chat and I'll try to ask as many as I can. And then we're going to have a look at last week's Interactive Rabbit Weekly Web Dev Challenge solutions, of which there were some seriously cool ones. Then it's the winner poll and a sneak preview of this week's challenge and some events news. And then I'll announce the winner and nag you to join the Weekly Web Dev Challenge again. And then we'll talk about next week's live stream. So, Dylan, if you're ready, shall we kick off with some questions?
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, cool. So you're quite open about the fact that before tech, you were delivering pizzas. So can you tell us a little bit about your journey from pizza delivery into tech? How did that come about?
Yeah, so sort of a long process in getting there, but sort of half-assing college for about 5 years, not really getting anywhere. I eventually dropped out and sort of created a study plan. But the way I sort of fell in love with it wasn't a super passionate way. I simply Googled what was a job that met my 3 criteria: what paid well, what had a lot of jobs, and what was going to increase. And that led me to software development. And once I started working outside of school and I started building my own projects, that was really when I fell in love with it, and then just sort of worked my way up from there.
So is it fair to say it's not something you were interested in from a young age? It only sort of came to you later in life, or was it always kind of there for you?
Tech, it's so weird if you talk about tech versus like software engineering or like web dev, because it's like I've always been someone who's like had a PC like since age 8, and at one point in time I had it's called, this is gonna sound very narcissistic, but just try to remember I was like 11. Dylanspalace.com was my website, and it was just like I built articles. I had like little animated GIFs I was putting on there and like pictures, and anyhow, that was like the closest introduction I had. It was all basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Eventually, that sort of fell to the wayside, and I didn't touch development of any type for like another decade.
Right. Okay. And then you Googled well-paying jobs and then found it that way. Awesome. So after discovering that this was the way you wanted to go, how did you go about acquiring the skills you needed to break into the field?
Yeah, so I tried to go sort of more of the traditional route that, again, like really gave it a shot of 5 years of my time and misery. I found that once I started blazing my own path, that was when I started seeing success. That was when I started seeing milestones. And even I think just recently I've hit like 4.5 or 5 years of experience, which is probably less than the amount of time I wasted in college, in all honesty, if I was to go back. And so it's like there's been significant growth, and that's just been looking about what resources are out there, what people are hiring on the job apps for. And because at the end of the day, my goal was to go get a job. Like, we gotta learn this stuff, and like some people learn it to be a hobby, some people learn to support their business. I was going to school at the time to go get a job in development. And then when I was like, I got to teach myself, I just simply have to learn what people are hiring for. And that really created the sort of syllabus that I was going to follow.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds great. So you've mentioned before in some motivational video you actually made for Scrimba that not everyone was so supportive of your transition into tech. Can you tell us a bit about that and how you overcame it?
Yeah. And so there's sort of two types of people that aren't going to support you. They're going to be complete strangers, and then they're going to be like some of your closest confidants most of the time. And oftentimes it's in good faith, right? Like the path to hell is built with good intentions. And like my parents love them to death, but most of them just sort of smile and nod and just whatever, but they don't get it. And then you have I remember one of the meetups, I just started my YouTube channel at the time, and I was doing like free code camp tutorials and building projects, really just trying to teach myself. And someone invited me down there that I was in a code meetup with, and someone found your YouTube channel, come down. It's like, oh, cool. And one of the senior devs there was just giving me some attitude, more or less, and it's like, I didn't know a pizza delivery driver could do coding tutorials. And it's just, you have these things that I refer to as like negative role models of like who I don't want to be like. And I find that to be very helpful, because I like from a visual perspective of like, I'm going to run like hell in the opposite direction of whatever it is I don't want to be like. And then maybe I'll end up being who I am, and instead of chasing something. So, but it happens, and God knows all the comments on YouTube. Oh my goodness. I go, oh yeah.
Hopefully not on here. Everyone's nice so far. Actually, Caffeinated Pixels says, Dylan is my favorite Scrimba teacher. He makes me laugh. So that's good.
Yeah, I try. I try to and keep things as casual. Sometimes I'm sure. When I was doing my course with LinkedIn Learning, I think I was a little too casual. We had to do quite a few retakes. So it's I like keeping things fun and casual, because once they stop being that, it falls back into this like, God, this is boring. God, I don't want to do this, and it's just start having issues with motivation.
Totally. Denny says, in terms of your learning journey, if you knew then what you know now, what would you have done differently?
Yeah, so when I stopped going to school and I was studying full time, money was very tight, very, very tight. I was barely getting by, and I've always been somewhat of a frugal individual with monthly expenses, and like try to keep my cost of living down low. But I used all free resources to learn. So like did free courses on Free Code Camp, Code Academy, some of the Scrimba ones, and they are getting up and running, and like Udacity, all free resources. I think there's a lot of great content that you could get for $20 a month or $10 a course that would have really helped propel me a little bit faster. And I think that's one of the areas where I really dropped the ball out of, money was tight, yes, but I think I could have spared $100 over a 6-month period.
Sometimes it's worth paying a bit more to get the quicker progress.
Yes, absolutely.
What would you say was your biggest struggle when learning to code? So either maybe technology based, or perhaps it was time management, or anything really.
Yeah, I've always looked at, if you're really committing to getting into software engineering, especially self-taught, right? You're on a crusade, like a scorched earth policy. It's not something you want to go into sort of half-assed. You really want to understand that. Like, and for me, I dropped out of college, going towards my end of my junior year at that time, where my family, I'm sure, would no doubt like, oh, he's almost done. I had no problem committing the time, because there's no other option for me in that aspect. The problem I probably had at the time was more so not feeling like a loser, and I suffered with the aspect of I'm not where I'm at in my life, And I think this happens to a lot of us, like every decade. I feel like, the closer you get to 30, you sort of have if you're like 25, you're like 26, 27, the closer you get 30, if you're not where you want, you start having like these little mini panic attacks. And then
Oh
as you
yeah.
go 40 and 50 and so forth, right? And like midlife crisis is sort of the standard one. But in my case, I wasn't happy with where I was. And so I felt legitimately like a loser. And that was part of what finally made me say, listen, I have to go do something different. But just managing that mental stress, because investing time for like 9 months, it took me about 9 months of studying to go get my first dev job. That's the thing that it doesn't pay off until it does. And it seems like a very simple thing to say, but if I had stopped at 7 months and just went back to school or did whatever else, then I wouldn't have found this path of development. Like, you just have to keep going until you get there. And it's a mental game more than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. I suppose kind of related to this is just someone's question. Hello, Dylan. I'm currently aspiring to become a web developer. What would you suggest me to do?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very broad question, right? You obviously, if your goal is to work in sort of the corporate world like I do, learn things that are in demand. Consistency is the most important thing in anything that you're going to do in your learning journey. I always say code every day till you get a job. Every single day. You get hit by a bus, code with your toes. Like, you gotta just like you have to sort of have this mentality that the consistency aspect is going to motivate you. Not only are you going to grow faster, you're going to get hungry and eager to get a payoff. So when you start going every other day, you're not as motivated to go throw yourself out there to bomb an interview or two because you haven't, the buildup hasn't happened. So one thing is people wait way too long to go and interview, way too long to jump jobs, way too long to change technologies and study new things. And we need to go out there and fail more. And when you go out there and fail, what you'll also find out is that you're succeeding more and you're seeing your failures. Go bomb an interview on some question that you totally know cost you the interview. You know that question now. Go and put yourself out there.
Yeah, very true. I think you have to fail a certain amount of times before you succeed in anything. So quote I always hear, becoming good at something. The first step to becoming good at something is kind of sucking at something. So yes, good points. I've got Shaf asking, how did you help yourself learn algorithms and problem solving?
Yeah, so this is kind of a two-part answer because it depends on, some people talk about data structures and algorithms, and they're talking about very computer science heavy, big O notation, space-time complexity, binary trees and breadth first search, and more of the sort of like things that people would emphasize in like a high tech company sort of interview. That for me, I used Algo Expert at the time to review some of these and get crash courses in YouTube. And that was a fantastic resource. Now, typically when solving like some of these low level algorithm problems that are more about your thinking ability and destructuring a problem than it is about space-time complexity, which I would say like 9 out of 10 roles will interview on something like reverse a string or like, here is an array, a two-dimensional array, pull out, the biggest value in both or something like that. That is really just practice. I really think you have to reprogram your brain to be a good software engineer. You start seeing things as small pieces and you start seeing like I can't stop my brain from branching off in logic paths anymore. It just doesn't work for me because that's what I do every day. And I'm okay with how I live my life that way. And so I think reprogramming your brain by just doing, I built a 100 algorithm challenge course. That part of that was I did like 150 algorithms and just to keep doing them so that I could do this, and that repetition and forcing myself to solve these things, that was really helpful.
That's a good tip. I think that will also help you. Isabel Hong, she's asking a similar question along the lines of how to prepare for technical interview questions on these kind of topics. So it sounds like, yeah.
The YouTube and Algo Expert again. I can't speak higher than what Clement did there. It's a very niche course of just covering these types of things, but it's by far the best resource that I've come across. And I spent about 5 to 6 weeks studying that every single day for about 2 hours. And just try to apply it. When I was solving these problems, one thing I would do is I'd go back to yesterday's previous problem without the instructions, and then I'd see if I could solve it again. And if I couldn't, okay, I'll watch that video again. And I did that for every single day. And what I ended up finding is that I started recognizing some of these patterns. I started understanding these things, and it's not going to happen overnight, but that sort of consistency is really, again, the thing that's going to pay off the most.
Yeah, that's a really good tip, going over things that you've done, because it's easy to think you know something if you've done it, but actually trying to recreate that can often show you either that you definitely can or not so much, in which case it's time for some revision. I've got Rick R asking, what's the difference between code on tutorials and actual code that's in production? What's your experience of that been?
I mean, code and tutorials by their very nature is low level, sort of entry level sort of items. And like, I've been trying to find like ways on Scrimba to do more sort of advanced courses, hence like the clean code course and introduction to unit testing and things like that are more of an intermediate level. But it's hard to cover those topics because oftentimes you need so much context, right? So like the code tutorials you're doing might have 1,000 lines of code. It's very small project. As you go and you work in larger applications, you're talking about, teams of 20 or 30 that have, 1 million lines of code for an application. And it's just between the, you maybe have a monolith repo, but chances are you probably have a bunch of microservices and micro front ends and, all the configuration that's unique to an environment. It's just, it's kind of like comparing a bicycle to a fighter jet. Like they both will travel to some location, but one is much more complex and requires a lot more work and can do much more than your typical application. And with that, additional complexity causes some additional issues that, if it's a one-man show, that life can be much simpler. You're the judge, jury, and executioner.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so let's move on to talking about job search strategies. Can you tell us how you approached your first technical job search and how that differed from your most recent one where you landed a job at Amazon? Or did you use the same approach?
No, I definitely think, one thing to take advice with a lot of times is catering your advice to where you're at in your career and life, right? It's not, advice typically isn't black and white. So my job search strategy evolves as my career evolves. And when I started, taking very much a shotgun approach of like, I'm just going to fill out as many apps as I can. I think this is generally the correct path for a lot of people who are starting their career early on. And what I ended up finding out as I was, testing some theories, because I was not getting as many callbacks as I thought I should be, given the amount of apps I was doing, is I started applying out of state. And then I started noticing that I was getting a lot more callbacks out of state because I think it was on ZipRecruiter. It tells you how many people apply, or LinkedIn, one of those. And it was like in Los Angeles, I was going against like 350 candidates. And in Tampa, Florida, for instance, I was going against like 13. And it was like just a much more manageable like task to overcome. So that was the first thing. The second thing was I started noticing that if I only applied to jobs that came out within the last 24 hours, my amount of callbacks and responses were, multiples higher. And the reason that I took from that is that now they're actually seeing my resume. I'm going to be one of the first people that that's going to apply to this. And I'm also only applying to jobs that they haven't either one settled on a candidate that they're going to move forward with, or two, that the app is actually still live, right? A lot of these things stay out there and just don't get taken down for, months at a time. And that was what I did early on to do it. Now, as I've had more projects that are a little bit more, not client facing, but a little bit more public, and like there are clear things and sort of work history and, speaking at conferences and building courses, and having years of experience, the jobs sort of come to you. And that's a unique experience to be in. But that's how Amazon at least came to be, and many other jobs. I probably get about, I don't know, maybe maybe 3 or 4, LinkedIn sort of recruiters every day reaching out. And now I sort of have like a collection that, like, when I quit this job after 3 days, I posted my status, hey, and basically I'm on the market. And then, like, 2 weeks later I had a job. So it's like, it's different as you progress in your career.
Yeah, that's not bad. We often talk on the live stream and in Scrimba community in general about the importance of finding the right fit for a job. And you were mentioning, I think it was shortly before we went live, about a job that you quit after 3 days. Do you feel comfortable sharing a bit about that? And
Yeah, sure. So I took a job in Idaho because I have family over there, and it was a similar industry than one I've worked in the past. And I packed up it was, oh my God, it was so miserable. It was I towed my car behind a moving truck, and I packed up the house, and like I was drove across country, hit a blizzard on the way there, and it took like 4 or 5 days. It was hell. And then got there, stayed in this little Airbnb with me and my girlfriend at the time, and our 3 cats and a dog, and it was just like super cramped. But we were looking for houses and doing all this. Anyhow, so I show up, and first day, it's very apparent that, like, maybe what I understood the role to be was not the role. And this is me being very nice with how I'm wording this. But but after the 3rd or 4th day, I remember coming home that first day, and as a parent, my girlfriend was like, "You look really annoyed and miserable." I was like, "No," and you start trying to talk yourself into it. It's like a bad relationship. No, well, it's good. It's just things are, it's just a rough day. And you start, but at this point, it's committed. But and then more of the story is it ended up not being what I thought was presented, and I spent about $7,000 of my own money in the move to go round trip, because I gave them back their pretty much any moving bonus you get. It's going to be contingent upon, oh, hey, you got to stay with us for 2 years for us to cover this, right? Or something like that, which is a reasonable thing to say. So I just simply gave them back their money, spent a whole bunch of time, made that 4-day trip back again, and, had to figure it out.
Yeah. So I think that's a really good story, really, for people to hear, because if it's not right, try to move away from it, I think, is the takeaway from here. So yeah, thank you for sharing that. Rufat asks, could you please tell me how many interviews you had before your first job? Do you remember? I guess it was a while ago now.
I mean, I remember the bad ones. There was one guy that reminded me of the Trailer Park Boys, who he had this Bluetooth headphone in, and it was this small web dev shop, and he was sitting with a TV tray and a salad in front of me, and like had this full on energy. He was just chowing down. And I think at the time I wanted, like, he was offering me like $12 an hour or something like that. And this is maybe 5 years ago, but I was like, man, I can't do anything less than 18 was kind of what, and because that's where I needed to be. But it was just this whole time of him, and you'll come across people like this, people who tell you everything that's wrong with you and how they're going to fix you. And it was just one of those items where that was one of those items. I'll never forget. He said, real developers use Streamweaver," was what he said to me. I was like, this ain't the place for me. Like, that was, but probably somewhere around 6, I would say, if I had to guess. But that was, I had one guy tell me that I got the job, and then when I followed up to actually start, he just kind of ghosted me. So
yeah, that's annoying. But you didn't give up. So
no, of course not. It's not. I encourage everyone to take the mentality of, it's not a matter of if you become a developer so much as when. And like in my case, I was putting in so much time and effort. I knew it was going to happen. I just didn't know when. And not to say that you're not going to have doubts or anything, but that's really the mentality you have to take, is sort of by any means necessary.
No, that's a really good mentality. So in contrast to the guy with his TV dinner, Well, I hope it's in contrast. Can you tell us about your experience of interviewing at Amazon? How was that?
Yeah. So I can't talk too much about the interview experience. But I can say that they changed some things up that I wasn't expecting that made it a much more pleasant interview. I've interviewed at Google, Microsoft, Facebook, and Amazon, and it seems like in the last couple years, and Coinbase as well, there's been a little bit more of an emphasis on other things besides just the computer science type algorithms, which has been refreshing because I think it's more relevant, and I think you start getting more broad candidates with better skills. One thing that I do when I interview candidates to bring on to the teams I'm on, or my sister teams, is not only do they need to be technical, but I look to see if someone brings something different to the table, to the team, right? How they might raise the team up in this one part of the domain that we're lacking in, and so that's like one thing I think these more broad interviews will do a better job of.
Yeah, good news. And I had a question a little earlier, which I now can't find, so I can't pin it. But it was asking, can you tell us a bit about your day-to-day life in Amazon?
Yeah, definitely. This is something I can talk about. I made sure to find out what's appropriate and what's not going to get my butt in trouble. So my day to day is very different than most Amazon employees traditionally, because Amazon's usually been a very on-site team. But with COVID and everything, so I've been with them a little less than 4 months now, so I've had like a good experience sort of ramping up, and that's I started at sort of a slower time where it was sort of New Year's and Christmas break, and then I had some vacation planned, and so like in that I've had about a month off in these last 3.5 months or so, but it's nice. One thing I've struggled with is meeting other passionate developers. I don't mean good developers, but like people who generally follow tech and like care about the things you do. And I can tell you that everyone that I've worked with at Amazon is in that category. I'm very happy. I have no plans to go anywhere anytime soon. And I like the product I work on, and I can, there's a lot of collaboration that my last team was remote, and so I have a good comparison of like what's the team that's remote versus that's just sort of, hey, you work from home, versus a team that's remote and they're trying to still get some of that sort of office sort of vibe of, like an example of something I really like is once a month there is sort of a coffee and talk sort of, I forget the name of it, where they pair you up if you want to. It's with another member in your domain. Let's say there's a couple hundred people, so you get to spend 30 minutes talking to somebody else about some project that they're doing, or like getting to know each other. That would probably happen more naturally in the office, but we're not in that environment, so they're sort of trying to do some of these things, and a lot of like cool little events, that digital events and experiences, and so I've been very happy with them.
Awesome. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your product? You showed it to me earlier.
Yeah. So
I'll get it up on the screen. Is that allowed?
Yeah. I think it's fine. I mean, it's on the main website. Yeah.
Okay. Here it is. Yeah. Talk us through this. Amazon Explore, it's called.
Yeah. I'll do my best. So I work on the Amazon Explore team, which it's a live streaming service between sort of an explorer and a guide, and it's really a digital experience marketplace, and it has shopping built in. So like you might have an experience where somebody is like walking through a street market and you're like, hey, I like that necklace that's halfway across the world. They might buy it for you and send it over. Or it could be maybe you want to have a cooking class that's live, and you buy the supplies and you can build through it. It's pretty cool. Most of the products I've worked on in my career have been like e-commerce platforms or component libraries, and due to the sort of the nature of the app, there's a lot more complexity and a lot cooler things that I'm working on. So it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it, and it's a it's a product that I think is very relevant to the times that we're in. Also, of like, hey, we are sort of stuck in our houses a little bit more. How can we still, get some culture, some creativity in our life? So,
yeah. No, that looks really cool. Yeah. I had a question from Abdul. I'm a master procrastinator. What's your secret for productivity?
It's to mature. It's kind of harsh, but one thing about being an adult and maturing is sort of being able to say what I want and being willing to sacrifice the moment for a better tomorrow. And you questions like these, they're kind of like, I generally try to be pretty nice and understanding, but there's something about productivity questions where this is something entirely within your control. This is something where you have to say like, hey, I'm not going to go out tonight, or hey, I'm not going to watch as much Netflix. If you have some distractions in your life, remove them to the best of your ability. I suffered playing video games while I was there, so I got rid of all my video games. Right. When my friends would call me to go out, I'd just turn my phone off for 10 hours. So there are things that you can do, but the biggest part of this is mental.
I think also just starting. So if you tell yourself, I'm just going to write one line of code, it's then easy. I think Alex told me this tip, is that it's easier to then continue. It's a bit like just tell yourself you're going to go to the gym and fill up your water bottle. But then when you're there, you're like, oh, well, I might as well work out. So that's my tip for what it's worth. Well, my tip, which I probably stole from Alex. Yeah. So, Dylan, can you tell us which skill or maybe a strategy helped you most in your latest job search?
Yeah, I mean, skill is more. This is not necessarily a skill, but having the I think the right type of drive. I think a lot of times when organizations look at hiring somebody like me, they don't necessarily hire me for my skill. They hire me for the impact I'm going to have on a team. And I think generally when I come on a team, I make an emphasis on testing, code quality, increase our code confidence, and deliver a quality product. And that may seem very generic, but it's not as common as you may think. There's a lot of people in the industry that are very feature focused, which is part of it. And sometimes in that pursuit, they can write some spaghetti code, I guess would be a nice way of doing it. And not to say that I haven't done that myself, but I think generally that's it's more of a mentality thing, and like having skills that support that, clean code, unit testing, end-to-end testing, and being able to raise up my team members in these subjects that are a little less prevalent is probably the thing that helps me in most of my job searches, other than like sort of being a passionate individual with like side projects and stuff like that. That has been probably the biggest help in a general sense.
And I think especially things like clean code, they can be overlooked. So if you've got that sort of ingrained into you, it can really help you to stand out as well.
Yeah, and I think I guess one additional thing about that is so many people are so ready to use a library for everything, for things they don't know, that they can't even build a lot of the things that these libraries do. And one thing I've really stayed away from is depending on third-party dependencies for things like that. And not to say I wouldn't use like some npm package, but it's the last option rather than the first. And what that has done has helped evolve me to be able to create more things quicker, and minimal things, and be less dependent on other. And I think that's made me a better developer in the process.
Yeah, when we had Kevin Powell last week, or maybe the week before, he was saying a similar thing along the lines of frameworks like Tailwind. If you don't know the basic CSS, you can have a lot of difficulty down the line. So it's really best to nail the basics, I think. Yeah. You mentioned earlier how moving your location to a part of the world that had fewer tech candidates helped you to basically stand out from the crowd when you're applying. Have you got any other tips of how best to stand out?
I mean, projects are probably the thing I think stands out most. And unique ones. If you can go and watch a tutorial to build your project, it's not unique, right? Like go out and build something. And in my case, it was a YouTube channel. That was really how I started and learned, and that was something that helped me get my foot in the door, and they could watch these technologies that I built, as well as like a site. If you go to codingtutorials360.com, it's like an Angular JS site. This very first like real thing I built, but it was enough for me to go and get my foot in the door, and start, making, I think it was $62,000 at the time, which is a ton of money. And I was super excited by that. But that was something I went and got my first dev job with, and those were the technologies they were working in. So I'd encourage just personal projects that you can go and iterate over and build. And it doesn't have to be a lot. Sometimes how many? One good project is enough. Like it's just, if you have one great complex project or one great project that has a lot of potential, just slowly iterate over it, and you don't need to have 5 different ones. One is enough.
Yeah. And Shaf asks, how much emphasis is placed on college degrees when it comes to the interview process? So you've got quite a good insight into this, I think, because you've been on both sides of the interview table.
Yeah. I mean, I can tell you that I think as someone who doesn't have a degree and has done quite all right in their career, every job I've interviewed for has either had bachelor's required or bachelor's preferred, and usually most of the time now it's bachelor's required, master's preferred are the jobs I get. So like it's sort of a nice to have. I can tell you that from a developer perspective, HR might put more, because they're sort of the first line of defense. From a developer perspective, we don't even look at it. Doesn't matter. Not 2 cents. I'm more interested in, what technologies you've worked with and where you've worked. And I would say most of my colleagues don't even look at the education spot. That, as I haven't interviewed at Amazon. This is at previous companies, but I can just say most don't care where you went to school. We care about, can you do the job and can we work together? And the sort of degree part, especially when you're getting to the senior engineer level where you have years of experience, doesn't really provide too much value.
Yeah, good to know. And I've got a question from Emilia. What's the best way to learn programming, project-based or watching tutorials? Which kind of links into another question I was planning to ask you, which is it essential to have side projects or a side hustle in order to land a job?
Yeah, so one thing is I don't think they have to be exclusive. I mean, I think typically you go and, watch tutorials to go build projects one day, right? I look at tutorials as sort of, if it's the alphabet, it's the ABCs, and now I need to take those letters and write words and then paragraphs and, go from there. And I think the way that you learn is you get introduced to things in tutorials, and then you hammer it in again and again through projects and really struggle through and reprogram your brain to go and actually retain something. Otherwise, it's just something coming in and out. As far as like our side projects or side hustles, a requirement, it really depends on how, what you want to do with your career. There are plenty of people who they don't have aspirations of going past, a typical senior software engineer role, and that's okay. I would say that typically, I think to go and get at an elite level, you'll just naturally fall into that because you enjoy it. I don't know any software engineers that don't enjoy it, that are very elite software engineers. And because if they have, they've left, and it's very apparent. And I think if you enjoy it, you naturally will find yourself having these sort of side hustles and side projects. It may not take over such a part of your life, but the majority of the developers I know have just naturally fallen into that. And it's not even so much that nowadays in my career, all the side project stuff help and whatnot, without a doubt. But I've got enough experience now lined up that I could stop doing all of this if I wanted, and I'd probably do just as fine. But I'm not, because I like it and I love it, and And I think a lot of people fall into that category.
Yeah. And then Shaf asks, so going back to your idea, I guess, that HR might be bothered about the college degree, but coders aren't. How do you get past that barrier of the HR interviewer? How do you kind of show them that college degree is basically not what they should be worried about?
Yeah, I mean, my advice is you don't. There are some people that you're not going to be able to convince. And this will be a harder issue earlier on in your career when you don't have any resume experience because you're an unproven asset. We were talking on Monday about like, well, if I go on Upwork, I have to charge really low rates to get started. And it's like, yeah, because I don't know if you're going to deliver or not. Right? Like it's a clean slate. So I'd encourage you to just try and find them, because there are people today who won't hire me because I don't have a college degree, and I am a proven asset to a degree based off years of experience and things I've worked on and delivered that are out there. But like there are some people you're not going to be able to convince. Some of the ways that you might get around this are certificates, projects, core technologies, being able to speak very well. Communication is something I think a lot of people really suffer in, so that when you do have a chance to talk to the recruiter, they don't want to go and try and sell you to their boss because maybe you're a little too awkward. Maybe you gotta work on those personal skills a little bit. Those are real things that can be worked on as well. But I would instead, other than the certificates and projects, and make sure the skills on the resume are there, try not to think about it too much. It's just part of the process like anything else. It maybe seem a little bit of a headache, but you'll get that first job, and then you won't really have to worry too much about it from there.
Yeah. And then this is an interesting one. Denny asks, would it look bad if your main project, or any project, I guess, has some monetization, such as affiliate links or advertising?
I don't think so. Everything I've ever done has been monetized. As a matter of fact, one of the things that I think help keep you, side projects don't have to be this sacrificial thing. Where you're just giving. I think almost every one of my projects has been education based, where I've been giving back and sharing knowledge. And I've always taken the approach since day one that I'm going to monetize it, because the great thing, one great thing that keeps you coming back to work on a side project is when that side project makes you $20. And once you sort of get a taste for passive income, it becomes a very tasty thing. And then you're like, oh, you know what? I'm going to work on my project because not only do I enjoy it, but it also paid my internet bill this month, right? And like so I would encourage you to think of very subtle ways and reasonable ways, more than subtle, to monetize your projects. And I think that's a perfectly okay thing to do, and I think you should do it.
Yeah, I don't think it would look bad at all. If anything, it shows that people have got faith in your product because they're willing to kind of pay for advertising or links or whatever. So no, I don't think it would look bad. Rick R asked a question a little bit earlier: how to learn GitHub at a higher level. So, for example, he's experiencing problems like he never runs into a complex merge because his code base is too small.
Yeah, I mean, those are they're like skills that you will pick up just by building your own projects and learning. And they're also skills that are kind of just like, you're just going to hit it in the working world. Like Agile is a good example of that, of like, you could probably learn it, but you're never going to really understand what it's like being on an Agile team until you're on an Agile team. And this is just one of those scenarios where, you're going to have a merge conflict, and then you're going to have to resolve it. And you might not do it right the first time or even the second time. And like, this is something that's happened to me. I'd asked one of the other senior devs when I merged code a couple months ago. I just couldn't figure out how to rebase it properly. And so I've rebased, many times since then, but it just wasn't something that any of my teams in the past I needed to do, because I had a smaller team and we worked on, typically different repos. But don't sweat it. When the time comes, you'll come across it and then you'll learn it, just like anything else. One thing that, these companies interview for is not what you know necessarily, but what you have the ability to learn. And that's why they'll switch you from team to team and technology to technology later on in your career.
And I think especially for a junior role, I wouldn't necessarily expect too high of a level. Well, I shouldn't anyway, with GitHub. So yeah, as you say, cross that bridge when you come to it, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so the last question I sort of thought of prior to the stream was, are the technical skills that you're using at Amazon different from your previous roles?
Yes and no. I mean, I'm working in the front end. I haven't primarily worked too much in React, so most of my experience is in Angular and some Vue, although I can pretty much pick up any framework. And then there's sort of additional technologies that are a little less known, and like any environment, getting comfortable with the tools that they use and things like that. But for the most part, it's front end's front end, so it's kind of nice that way.
Yeah. I've got Fru asking, do you have to fulfill all requirements listed on job posts? Some seem to require so many that as a starter, I don't have them all.
Yeah, of course. This is something that's sort of like, again, it's like a wish list, right? Most, as I mentioned, most roles require a bachelor's and like prefer a master's for like what I'm in. I have neither, right? So it's kind of like, I would say as a rule of thumb, and this will get easier as you go and gain some experience and you've filled out some apps, is you'll start seeing what are true requirements and what are nice to haves. And you'll also start seeing things that don't matter. Like one question I got when I was interviewing is like, how many years of Jira experience do you have? And it's like, it's a question that is something that doesn't matter. I could say, I don't even know what Jira is, but it shouldn't disqualify me, because most of the time, when you're in these positions, it's these are sometimes non-technical people that are being thrown into a technical environment, and there's a little bit of a disconnect. But I would say if you meet about 50% of the requirements, which may seem low for some people, there are going to be some core ones you're going to have. If it's front end, you're going to have to, know HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And then, but if you meet about 50%, go ahead and apply. What's it going to cost you? Maybe a couple minutes of your time.
Is it fair to say then that the more obscure skills are probably less essential than the more, sort of everywhere ones like JavaScript?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, earlier on in your career, it's a little bit easier because the expectation is that you are a generalist and that they may throw you into something that is going to be new, but at least you have some familiarity with the core stuff. Later on in your career, when you've been working as an engineer, they might just throw you in a different programming language altogether, or like different product. They'll be like, hey, I know you came in here for front end, but that role got filled, and now you're an Android dev. All right, whatever. But yeah, I know that's a scary thing. And one thing I did was I sort of went through 100 apps, and I had like a little tally of the skills. And I just tallied them and said, okay, I looked at 100 front end interviews, front end applications, and then of these were the top 25. And so to me, those are the required fields, and these are the ones that are not. And I sort of used that as a list of how I felt comfortable. But again, just about 50% if I was to throw a number on it.
Oh, great tip. I'm aware that I told you it was around 45 minutes for the stream. We're now at 48. Do you need to head off, or have you got time for another question?
I got about 10 minutes.
All right, then. So I've got a little question here. What kind of projects would you recommend for a starter portfolio?
So I would recommend something you could think about monetizing, as we discussed earlier. And again, it's not to get rich or anything. It's just sort of motivate you and pay for some of your hosting and things like that. API projects, something that works with asynchronous code, is fantastic, because that's a large part of web development, being comfortable with promises and things like that, as well as databases. And you can do that through creating your own CRUD application. Take a subject that you're passionate about. I use MMA as an example because I like MMA. Make a UFC API that does something, right? And build a front end that displays that. But most roles that I interviewed for the junior level, they were really there to build like back office sort of CRUD tools. And so a CRUD application is really great for that.
No, thank you. Good tips. And then Sukesh says, I've been non-technical for 8 years. I'm now learning front end. Would companies consider my profile?
Yeah. I mean, it's like anything else, it'll be an uphill battle. Like we're all non-technical till we're not, right? So it's you know, I think I got my first dev job at 28, and like, you know, oftentimes people are so concerned about age and this and that, and a transition's a transition. It's gonna be hard, no matter what. But just, you know, be realistic. Sometimes people want to come out the gate and make 150 grand, and like, that's going to be hard. And sometimes it's hard leaving a non-technical role where you're paid well for a technical role where your salary might be lower than your previous one. Yeah, but you know, the money will come and the opportunities will come. But companies will consider you. You just have to have the skills and be able to display those skills and talk very highly about them when you get the opportunity.
So on that then, do you think it's okay or maybe even necessary to take a pay cut to get into the tech field?
Yeah, and I'd say this is probably one of those things that not everyone's going to be in that situation. But I have about 5 mentees that I talk to, and one of them is going from a role that was a sort of a director level in his field, making about $150,000 a year, to in a non-technical role, to transitioning to what I would say in the States, you might start on the low end between 50 and 60,000, maybe, you know, let's just say 75, but that's still half. If he starts at 75, half what he was previously making. And just to be okay with that mentally, right? Like, could you go and land a role for, you know, 100,000 for your first role? Sure, it's not impossible, without a doubt. But how long are you holding out? How long are you not getting paid to learn? How long are you not getting those years of experience? Like, and so I would encourage people who are in that position to just accept the reality that you're going from one world to another, and there's going to be maybe a learning curve and some sacrifice that needs to be made there.
And you spoke earlier about soft skills kind of being as important as the coding side of things, and sort of improving your personal skills is a thing that you can do. Have you got any tips on how you can go about leveling up your soft skills?
Yeah, the first thing is just understanding it's a skill. So oftentimes people will just shut themselves down and say, like, this is just the way I am. I'm, and the reality is everything's a skill, right? We can sort of learn it, and it's going to be uncomfortable, and it's going to be, you know, one of those items where it's, you know, growth is uncomfortable. And I call myself, I used to call myself an introvert, but I don't think it's that. I think I'm an anxious extrovert. That's what I think I am. That's like a caveat to it. And one thing that I've done is just try to lower my stress levels, and which is kind of strange because I feel like in my case, my anxiety makes it harder for me to go outside my shell. And so how I, you know, keeping my stress low. But there's a lot of great books. In a professional sense, The Clean Coder talks about how to act as a software engineer, and like from a business sense, they'll help with that and how to communicate. I found a lot of help in like relationship books. Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. There's a lot of great stuff in that book simply about communicating, and a lot of these books on relationships, that's the majority of it, is being able to say what you need to say in a respectful way so that your other party understands that you're coming, and you can apply that in your daily life. But really just sort of practicing it. Whenever I feel uncomfortable about saying something, I will say it, and I'll just be like, hey, I'm going to say this. I feel kind of strange. I'll say that I'm feeling awkward and tackle it. And what I've found is that as I go and do these things more and more, they become easier and easier, and you just have to get started.
Yeah, like with code, I guess. Practice makes perfect. I just want to talk a little bit about your YouTube channel. Because at what stage of your sort of coding journey did you start that?
Pretty early on. So right around the time I maybe a month or two before I dropped out of school, I took this technical writer / like business analyst role that I was scraping by on, and that was when I was spending about the 9 months learning to code. And I started that because I had a friend who had a channel. It's called Engineered Truth at the time on careers. And he was, he'd come over to the apartment and talk about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm fine. I'm going to make a video portfolio. It'll be a great project. It'll help me learn, and maybe I'll make a few bucks. And so a lot of that is, I think one of the interesting things about my YouTube channel is you've essentially got to see me going from a pizza delivery driver to a, Amazon, engineer, and sort of the journey along the way.
Yeah, it's great for yourself as well to see the progress you've made, and then to show it off, I guess, if you're applying for jobs.
Yeah, it's been interesting. Something I've sort of put on the back burner in recent times as I've been focusing on other things. But I still like to do my live streams on there and answer questions similar to this and try and help out how I can.
Yeah, fabulous. Well, thank you very much for joining us, Dylan. It's been very enlightening and interesting and lovely to have you on. But I'll let you go now because you've got to start your day at Amazon, no less.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks ever so much for coming.
Bye.
Bye. Yeah, so that was lovely. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the format, after our interview, we go on to our weekly web dev challenge solutions. And the challenge last week was, where is it? Yeah, that's the transition jingle. Yeah, the challenge last week was to code up an interactive change color rabbit. And we had some really lovely ones. So let's take a look. I've got this from Ambreen. I realized that what I should have done is waited until Easter to do this because it's very Easter-like. Some of them are really Easter-like. But we'll have something else for Easter. Maybe, I don't know, chickens or something. So don't worry. But anyway, Ambreen's made this with these lovely bouncing bunny rabbits. And then you can change, as requested, the colours. And if you watch the eyes, when I change them, there's a lovely little animation. So that's cool. Then we've got this from Catherine, which I really like because, oh wow, I didn't actually notice this nose, I think is moving. Or maybe I'm imagining things. I'm sure it's moving. But yeah, again, you get a little animation when you change things. Oh, look, how sweet is that? Very nice. And then we've got this one. I love this one from Teresa. She's restyled the original rabbit head to have these amazing eyes and, as requested, wired up the color picker. I just love these eyes. I think they're adorable. Yes. Then we've got this one from Wizzo, which is really interesting because it's completely different from the original rabbit head that was provided. And you can change the background, the rails. Should we have pink? Well, that's purple. That's even more purple. And then even change the color of the entire rabbit, which I think is super groovy. Then we've got this one from Elaine, which, wow, I mean, we talked about interactivity. Okay, but this, you can change the size of the ears, you can change the shape of the head, the eyes. How cool is this? And then you can change the nose, plus all the different colors with this cool little picker, which I think she said was recommended to her, because this is not the standard picker. I think she said it was recommended in one of Gary Simon's courses, which, shameless plug, I can now reveal, Gary Simon will be on the show, I think it's 3 weeks from now. It's on the 10th of April, I believe. So that's exciting. Anyway, I digress. Yeah, this is awesome. You can build your own rabbit. It's like Build-A-Bear, but with an electronic rabbit. Super cool. And then we've got, yeah, speaking of Easter, this one, which is from Jan, you can change the colors as requested, but also you can change the egg. So you can have a chicken. How cool is that? Adorable. And oh yes, then we've got this one from Aradis, which I think is super cool. It's very different from the original rabbit head again, and very, very detailed actually. Look at that eye. Amazing. Yeah. Oh, you can even change the fur color. Let's have a, oh, maybe not. Oh God. Okay. I'll let you, can you actually pick that from, oh, wow. Amazing. That's super cool. Very nice indeed. And then the final one is from Chris, which has wired up the color pickers to these eggs. Very creative. Oh, look. And I really like this animation going on with the feet and the eyes. That is just adorable. They're all adorable. Yes. Michael says, wow. Wow, indeed, Michael. Yeah, I know. I'm not sure which one you meant wow on, but they're all wow in my view. So let's open the winner poll. These solutions are really cool, says Michael. Yes, they are. Here is the poll. So go in and cast your vote. And I'm going to use, do you remember Tom's timer from last week? This NASA themed one. I'll give you 3 minutes because I've got a few things to impart to you in that time. The first being the next challenge. Yeah, once again, we've got 2 different levels of challenge this week. Link in the chat. And what you have to do is wire up this button so that it shows and hides these emojis. That's the basic challenge. If you want a more advanced challenge, you can, there's a link inside the scrim, which you can hit, and then you have to basically build everything and then wire it up. And then the even more advanced challenge is making a game out of this. And this was inspired by, we had a food API challenge. And we didn't mention games in the challenge, but well, not everyone, but lots of people made games from the food API, which was super cool. So if you fancy making a game involving, where is it? Okay, these emojis, now's your chance. I mean, you've got a cat, a box, a fish, and a dog. So that's just begging to be a game, I think. So yes, do enter. It's even easier to enter than it used to be. All you need to do is tweet with that hashtag, and then your entries reach me through the pipes. Actually, that's just reminded me. I need to announce the, what do you call it? Randomly selected winner, because we now have 2 prizes. The one voted for by you, which you're hopefully currently doing now, and the randomly selected one. So I'm going to choose someone now. That's going to be Avanika. Let me find your entry. Here's Avanika's entry. She did a very good job, actually. She's got some animations on the eyes and changing colours. But this was randomly selected. So yes, Avanika, get in touch with me and I'll give you a 6-month Scrimba Pro subscription. And that never becomes easier to say. It never does. Okay. Oh, look, we've got 15 seconds and I haven't actually finished blaring on about what I need to talk about. But never mind. I will find the results And then we'll see who the winner is this time. Last week was a tie. Oh, look, lift off. That was, yeah, amazing. Ooh, not so this week, though. We have a clear winner of Elaine with 47.6% of the vote. A landslide. Let me find it. Not that one. I think it's, yes, this one. Fantastic. Yes, well done, Elaine. You have won Scrimba swag in our newly done up shop, a subscription, and the weekly web dev winner role over on Discord. Yeah, so, fantastic. Illa Gold says it's impossible to choose just one. Yeah, I know. Absolutely. Yeah, because they're all so brilliant. So I also had some extra questions, like last week. And the most popular bunnies are this one. I don't know if the purple-shirted man played a role in that, or if it just the baby bunny, and this one, possibly in a teacup. Oh, very sweet. And then, by far, the most popular coffee was this latte art. Closely followed, well, not that closely, but followed by an espresso and this coffee ice cream concoction is the only word for it. Yeah. So well done to this week's winners. Woo. Yeah. We have got some exciting things coming up in terms of events. And there are several ways you can see them. The first one is this slide. We are going to have office hours every Monday. Now, our new plan is to have an event every day, Monday to Friday, I want to say. Not sure about Fridays, evidently not looking at this. Monday to Thursday at 5 p.m. This says 4 p.m., but it actually will be 5 p.m. going forward. And Mondays will be office hours. And then Tuesdays we'll have Scrimba socials. Wednesdays, as you all know, are the live stream. And then the community meetup on Thursdays. So come along. And to check out what's happening and where, all you need to do is go to scrimba.com to your dashboard, which has more and more things every day, pretty much, including the events. So you can check out what's happening at any given day. You can even watch the live stream as of today and continue your courses, hit up the community, and see the latest weekly web dev challenge. So yeah, go in and check that out. And as usual, I must encourage you to join the weekly web dev challenge because we've nearly got 1,300 students enrolled. How exciting is that? So hit it up, go along to this page and click enroll, and then you'll get the emails which remind you of the live stream, but also give you the new challenge every week on Wednesdays. Speaking of which, the next live stream is with Michael, who's currently in the chat. He, as you may know, is a professional dev, and he wants to spill all of his productivity and developer tips and tricks to save you time and make you a web dev virtuoso. I'm talking VS Code, design, cheat sheets. We've got something about React hooks, how to make stuff look good. What else have we got? Can't remember now. Oh yeah, stuff about Flexbox, dev tools, converters for pixels and rems, all sorts, much more. So yes, don't miss that. Your future self will thank you. So I think that's about it for this week. It was a bit of a funny time this week, 1 p.m. I was in a mad rush this morning, actually, running around trying to get everything done. But it seems to have worked out reasonably well. Yeah, but next week and every week after that will be 5 p.m. So do come along. It's lovely to have you all. And thank you for all your, come on, Leanne, bunny rabbit entries. They were all very adorable and made me smile a lot. So yes, I look forward to your cat-themed games next week. See you later and have a wonderful week.